Hello.
Hi, this is Debbie.
This is Fairley.
Hi, Fairley.
Hi.
This is Janet. Hi, Fairley and Debbie.
Hello,
Hi.
Janet.
Hi, Debbie.
Morning, Luann.
Good morning.
And there's Sharon.
Good morning, Elsie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Fairley.
Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning.
Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Janet.
Hi, Sharon.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning, Karen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Elizabeth.
Uh-oh. Good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Francis.
Good morning.
I don't think so.
Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dale.
Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning, Florence.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kara. Good morning, Betty.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dale.
Good morning.
Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Sharon.
It's 10 o'clock.
This call is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning roundtable discussion. We're so glad you all could join us this beautiful October day. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church, Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And we welcome you all. We will start with our morning prayer.
This morning I'm reading from 165 of Miscellany. Goodness never fails to receive its reward, for goodness makes life a blessing. As an active portion of one stupendous whole, goodness identifies man with universal good. Thus may each member of this rise above the oft-repeated inquiry, "What am I?" to the scientific response, "I am able to impart truth, health, and happiness, and this is my rock of salvation and my reason for existing." Mary Baker Eddy.
Beautiful, thank you. Should be ours as well. Okay, the watching point.
Watch number 234. Watch lest you believe that you will need protection from the wind of error all your days, lest it blow out your spiritual flame. Will progress bring the demonstration that will enable you to know that the wind only causes your spiritual fire to burn more brightly? Surely this was true in the case of our leader. When Gilbert Carpenter was at Mrs. Eddy's home, she taught him this rule of protection. She instructed him to handle every claim by knowing that he was the better and stronger for it, that every effort of error to harm him only made him better and lifted him higher. Let us suppose a claim of epidemic was rampant. How would you handle it? Could you not realize that error never created anything and never could? Therefore, the only epidemic must be the presence of God's encircling love, which mortal sense is distorting, and so we are stronger and better for love's presence and safe from all harm. Thus, we can realize in Christian Science that every time error claims to throw us down, it only serves to put us in contact with our Father, Mother, God, whom we derive a constant renewal of life. End quote.
I just love that. That's so beautiful. Any comments?
Well, this is awesome. And it's really very helpful. Throw us down and we get right back up with God.
Yes, stronger than before. And I know my own experience, and I know in your experiences that is what happens, isn't it? You get this super understanding and, oh my gosh, you've gone up the scale of being. Florence?
Well, it's really a part of the probation. Mrs. Eddy says on page 195, I see, she says that probation progress goes on until there is no life, substance, or intelligence in matter. So the storms are part of it. The storms are part of this probation. When they come, we still have to know the nothingness and the powerlessness if we're going to know the allness of God. And this is what this what she's saying, and it will only make you better. It makes you just run to God and stay there and know more about Him. So instead of fearing and running away, always running away, which it will follow, you might as well turn around and know that it's making my light brighter.
Beautiful, thank you. Yes. Where was that quote from Mrs. Eddy from?
195 of the Blue Book.
The Blue Book. I should have known. That was lovely. Thank you. And tying that into our topic today, probation after death. Anyone else on this watching point?
Well, in the Blue Book on page 89, Mrs. Eddy says, she says, referring to Jesus, she said, even he even was tempted. And you are enduring temptation, that is all, and are growing under it. You will come out of this 10,000 times as strong in truth as you went into it. I really like that. And I like also how she, excuse me?
It's wonderful. Go ahead. I love it too.
Yeah. But how she turned, how the word epidemic, and Eustace does this in his book too. He talked about, if the word is God, then every word, even though it seems to have a bad connotation, when we turn it around and see it, well, it's got to be a word for God. Here he uses it as an epidemic. It's an epidemic, meaning God's encircling love is the only epidemic. So that takes all the power out of it to be awful, to be something to fear. And I really like that about this too.
Yes, thank you. That's wonderful. Such good points. Yeah, and we're taught here, right where the problem seems to be is only the very presence and power of God, and you can prove it. Turn it around. And yeah, the beautiful readings Wednesday on temptation. And when you're struggling, you realize it is temptation. It's pressing on you to believe that God is not all. It's pressing on you to doubt. It's pressing on you to fear. It's pressing on you to feel hopeless or discouraged. And it comes, and it seems aggressively to get you to bow down to a false god. And that's when you've got to hang on. I was thinking of Peter's song, Blow Winds Blow. and God's image will be revealed. So those are the temptations. It's always suggestion. Then it seems to manifest it in some real thing, but it's still an illusion. It's always that temptation to believe in something other than God Almighty.
Who else?
And in reality, it's no different than a math test, is it?
No, not really.
You're given a problem, solve it. When these things come to us, they're like a math test. They are a problem. Solve it. And Christian Science has the answer. And if you solve it instead of run from it or accept it as a real problem without a solution, then you grow. And that is how we grow. And we learn in Christian Science, it's a requirement in order for us to grow.
And that's why sometimes I get the question asked, well, I've just had this wonderful time praying and studying. I'm feeling so uplifted, and then boom, something happens. Well, that's because, yes, you were in a classroom. You've just been taught all this stuff, and now here's your test. Take it. That's why. So you can prove what you've studied, your exalted sense of something. You can prove it to be true. And once it's proven, it's wonderful. It reminds me of that story. I'm going to get into Spurgeon a little bit later, but he tells the story of a preacher who visited a woman who he noticed in her Bible next to some verses she would have P, and he would say, well, what does that mean? And she said, that means precious. That I love that verse. It's precious. And then another verse would have PT, and he said, well, what does that mean? She said, well, that means proven and tried. So, I mean, it's a beautiful thing to do, to think about, in other words, that's a statement I have proven and tried and know it to be true. So anyway, it was a very dear conversation with this dear stalwart woman in her Bible.
Like David wouldn't go fight Goliath with any weapon he hadn't proved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what happened with Jesus after he just spent 40 days in the
Yeah.
wilderness praying?
Tempted.
Tempted.
Yeah, and then after he resisted and overcame all those temptations, dozens of people, sick people, came to him for help, right?
Yes.
And he healed them all.
So you see the sequence of events there. And that's how it comes. Now, Nancy had a wonderful experience this week. I was going to have her speak to.
Yes, well, in the beginning of the week, one of my family members was feeling quite unwell and asked to be tested for this nameless nothing. And in looking for a place to go, there was seemed to be a lot of red tape. You had to have appointments and everything. And another family member had mentioned a little mom and pop pharmacy nearby. I decided to just put this person in the car and just go over without calling. We walked in, and the pharmacist greeted us with a big smile, no mask, and said, "Come right on in. I'll take care of you. No problem at all." So while he was administering the test, my family member asked him why you're not wearing a mask. And he said, "Because I'm not afraid. Although I respect everyone's choice whether to wear one or not, I personally am not afraid, and I refuse to live my life in fear." He went on to tell us that with the media and the government, they've gotten so out of control, and everyone is gotten people into a state of fear. He said we are constantly being bombarded with the news and various opinions, and having all of this forced upon us and trying to control us, so that at the least little thing, people are coming in, the least little symptom, they're just in a panic. And he said he was speaking from his own personal experience with this nameless nothing, and that our bodies are naturally made to fight these things. And he told my family member, you just have to not be afraid and listen to all this hype. You have to fight it. And the wonderful thing was that I could see this, my family member changing, where before there was such weakness, he was getting strength. And I was so grateful for this and for the pharmacist's positive statements, because I really did feel he was an angel, and his words broke this mesmerism, because we walked out in a different frame of mind than when we went in. And all is well.
And all is well, yes, of
And
course.
the test was negative.
Yes,
The test is negative.
So that's it says that it needs a believer. Every error needs a believer.
Thank you. Yes. A belief and a believer.
They are both one and the same. Nothing.
I've been meaning to look this up. It's either in the blue book or the red book. It talks about how animal magnetism is creating a belief and then getting people to fear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Until a law seems to be made, and then it all seems to be happening. A mortal law. But yes, it's a wonderful quote in the blue book. The sequence again of the lie and the liar, the belief and the believer. So if you're not going to listen, not listening. And you see, Nancy's been praying, and she also got help before she went to do this, but she's also been praying very diligently about all this. And God opened up the way and the perfect solution. What was that?
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to bring that great quote, error, and it might not be exactly like that, but error comes asking for life, and we give it all the life that it has.
Right, that's one.
Yes,
that's a good one.
That's right.
This is another one, though, about the belief, right? And getting animal magnetism, getting people to believe it, and then creating a mortal mind law, and then seeming to have the effects of that mortal mind law. But it's all belief.
And this is how false, wicked forms. Yeah, this is how false and wicked forms of government, like socialism and communism and Marxism, this is how they operate, isn't it? They will find a belief that they can get people to fear, and then they will grind it, they will promote it, so that they can gain more control. And it's all belief.
And then they begin to dictate to you what you should or shouldn't do, rather than God and your individual rights. And this is what must be guarded against. And the reason we give it names, but it's all animal magnetism. That's what it is. It's a carnal mind and it's animal magnetism. And that's what the carnal mind and animal magnetism does. It works to get control through domination and fear and get you away from the Father, Mother, God. Does it have intelligence? No. Where does it come from? Where does the darkness come from? Where does 2 + 2 = 5 come from? It's a mistake about the truth. It's a counterfeit. It comes from nowhere. And when the light shines, it goes nowhere. So
yeah, I've seen one of the best T-shirts. It says, "Fear is a virus."
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. It is. So thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Karen. That was such a wonderful watching point. I'm going to put it in my folder. And also, I thought the watch last night, it speaks to all of this, and to probation after death. These were quotes from the Red Book that Bruce found. Beyond and above this mortal and material sense of being exists the immortal and spiritual facts of all things to bless and beautify our lives. So why not dwell there? Why not dwell in the land of understanding and joy, and instead of in this world of beliefs and horror, the Adam dream? And then the other quote too. Be this the stars in our night. Makes me want to cry. It's so beautiful. That God is love. That every step of goodness is a departure from material sense and self, and the entrance into man's spiritual selfhood. So those of you who are awake at night struggling with things, which we all are, I certainly am, let this be your star in the night, that God is love, and that every step of goodness is departure from material sense and self, and the entrance into man's spiritual selfhood. Again, this is the probation after death, and this is the beautiful thought. And what was that article? Shardy reminded me of a beautiful article by Mrs. Eddy. The name of it is which article? Remember the beginning of the week. We're going to end with it today. Okay. And it is just for today.
Oh, just for today, yes.
Just for today. See, I get people off guard sometimes. I know. Yeah, Ron told me the funniest story about he probably didn't think it was funny, but about when I called on him a week or so ago, and he was in the car, and he couldn't get to the phone to answer. And anyway, the sequence of events that happened to poor guy. And anyway, but he was trying valiantly. I want you all to know that he was trying valiantly to answer. And this is why I sometimes don't call, especially on the out-of-town people, because I don't know where you are, what you're doing, or if you have your paper in front of you or not. So it's not that I'm trying to be partial to the people around here, but here, this table, I can see who has a paper in hand and who doesn't. It makes a big difference. So anyway, those are beautiful thoughts and beautiful ways to think of probation. And just for today, we focus on what we have to do and how to be better. And this lesson beautifully tells us again, we have the Sermon on the Mount.
It's all the instruction we need.
All the instruction we need. It is, and we'll get into that. But before we do, I have a few other things. Now, Carol is going to tell of something she wrote to me. Don't look at me that way, Carol. Oh my God, I have no idea. I have the paper here. It really did happen.
Yeah. When I was reading this lesson on, I think it was Friday morning, I just could see in my mind's eye something that happened many years ago, when Mrs. Evans's mother passed. she had been not feeling well for a couple of days, and we took turns going in and sitting with her and praying and whatnot. And when I went at my lunch hour on this one particular day, and she had just passed. And so I was there when Mrs. Evans came in, and she came in and just was very quiet for a couple of minutes. And then she said, "Now you know you were never born into matter." And that just blew everything. It was just, I thought that was the most beautiful thing. And like, what does Earth mean? You know, she was never born into matter. This is all a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, we got to do our best to make it a good dream, but it's just a dream. And it just seemed so clear. And it just blew the whole everything away.
Yes.
It was great. Yes.
Yeah. And, you know, that goes along with in the lesson, which I don't think I ever noticed before, but we have no right to say that life depends on matter now, but will not depend on it after death. Well, interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, my gosh. You know, everything of our heart, our lungs, everything is so dependent on matter. If we don't have that, we're not going to live. Well, we know darn well we do live afterwards. And there's no matter. So what is life? How can life be dependent on matter? That just makes no logical sense. That is what's so wonderful about Mrs. Eddy and what she
discovers.
Yes, she discovers. And again, in the lesson, life is eternal. We should find this out and begin the demonstration thereof. Life and goodness are immortal. Let us then shape our views of existence into loveliness, freshness, continuity, rather than into age and blight. Yes, and this life might seem like a dream, but actually when you're living in the kingdom of heaven, this is reality. You can have that kingdom of heaven now. This is why we do all this work, to prove this reality, because I used to think everything's all just a dream. Well, life is but a dream. Well, if you're living in the Adam dream, yes. But when you're living in God, it's not a dream. It's very real.
And that's how you shape your views of existence properly, to see the reality behind everything that might appear to be material.
Yes, the word loveliness, the quality of being very beautiful and attractive. Freshness, undecaying, the quality of being pleasantly new or different. And then continuity, unbroken and consistent existence or operation of something over a period of time. And then uninterrupted connection. Our connection with God, uninterrupted. This is life. I love those words. Think about those words and apply them to yourself. Loveliness, freshness, continuity. Shape your views as you go about your day. Are you expressing loveliness, freshness, continuity? And it goes with the lesson, golden text. Lillian.
As Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life.
Thank you. Freshness, newness, loveliness, continuity. Every day, make it that. I loved Dale, her testimony. Is she there? Well, Dale.
Dale A.
Dale A, yeah, how her neighbor, those of you heard it. I don't know if you want to speak to it, Dale A.
I'm here.
Thank
I
you.
was just I was on mute with my phone, and I was on mute there. I heard it say I was put on mute. But anyway, I've been using that every day and sometimes during the day, and it really makes a difference. So the ones that didn't hear, my neighbor was always in a good mood, and I asked him, how that would happen. He's not a particularly religious person. And he said, I choose my mood every day when I get up in the morning. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a simple thing to do, and what a difference it makes.
Yes. And then his mood was joy, gratitude, and love, to be loving.
Right.
Grateful.
and we could all use more of that, especially me. You know.
Yes.
And the way you give it, you said when you gave it, you said, "I'm feeling better already."
Yes, and I was, and it really made a difference.
It's wonderful. It's sometimes the most simplest thought that can be the most powerful.
And Mrs. Eddy tells us, hold the right model in thought, right? Well, that's the right model.
Yes, and I think Florence was going to say steadfastly to the enduring, the good, and the true. And then what happens?
You will bring them into your experience according to the portion of your.
Yeah, let's paraphrase, but yes, you'll bring them into your experience by holding them in your thought. That's understanding versus the beliefs. Now, if you go around just thinking of the beliefs, then you're going to seem to bring that into your experience as well. Lawrence, were you going to say anything, or anyone else?
No. One thing about imparting in this way, in all the ways that have been mentioned, you're proving it, you're living it, so you're proving it, and that's how you impart it. So I think that's what Dale A's testimony is about.
Yes. Yeah. Now, Carol, in her email to me, she also mentioned something else that happened. Now, let me just say a few things. Mrs. Evans' parents, George and Alice, were greatly beloved by Mrs. Evans, but she would always say it was her father that was the real scientist. Her father was the one who had all the real understanding and was a tough scientist. Her mother, she would always talk about Alice, was just this very, very nice person. Never said a mean word about anybody, just very nice. I think this is what drove Mrs. Evans crazy. I mean, as far as about niceness, because, she wouldn't take a stand on anything. And Mrs. Evans would even say she would deliberately sometimes to be very, very naughty just to get her mother to do something. As a child, yes, as a child, to get her mother to do something. She said finally one time her mother spanked her or something, and she was so grateful that her mother cared enough to stop her from being so naughty, because evidently Mrs. Evans had a lot of spunk. Yeah. Now her father wouldn't tolerate anything like that. So in her later years, after Mrs. Evans' father, George, passed on, her mother eventually just took to bed. And Mrs. Evans was heartbroken. It was like without George there, Alice couldn't function. Yeah, couldn't function because he had been the real Christian scientist. So she took to bed. And years. And Mrs. Evans, that's the first church house she bought. She bought mainly for a place for her mother, and then there was another dear lady in our church who lived with her and took care of her. But not that she needed a lot. She didn't need a lot. She just needed her meals. She seemed quite fine, right, Carol?
She did. Yeah, she was bright and
sunny, happy.
Intelligent.
She just
didn't want to get out of bed.
She just didn't want to get out of bed. So anyway, go ahead with the last story about her. When you told her, she kept saying, "I don't know what to do."
Yeah, she was half asleep, half awake. It was shortly before she did pass, and she was this one night she was just kind of moaning and just saying, "I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do." And she said it over and over and over. And finally I just said very quietly, "You do know what to do." And she sat up bolt and she said, "I don't know what to do." Stay back down.
Oh my.
I thought I'd done something very terrible. Yes. But then later on, Miss Evans said, "Thank you so much for doing that." She said that was needed. Thank you. So it was the right thing.
Yes. but it shows that there's sometimes a feistiness on the wrong side, especially she didn't want to be told that she didn't know what to, she said, I don't know what to do, and don't tell me I do. So and that's how it operates. And and sometimes in this healings of Mrs. Eddy, there'll be examples. There was that little boy that kept saying he was sick or something. He was sick. And then she said, no, he's not sick. And he went, oh, I am. I am too. So I just thought that was, if I'd heard that story, I hadn't remembered it, but that's how it works. And this is why, and many times in conversations with people, when they tell me I don't know what to do, I always say, you do know what to do. Of course you know what to do. You're going to talk yourself into thinking you don't know what to do. You do know what to do. I know in my own case, I'll often have to be careful. I'll say, I don't know, or I don't know. I don't know what to do. No, if God is your mind, you absolutely know what to do. Don't argue on the wrong side. Argue on the right side. You do know what to do.
So there.
Elsie always says, if God knows, I know.
That's right. Elsie's a good, strong worker.
And that's why, no matter what you're facing, you have to demand the blessing. Demand the blessing. There is a blessing there. Don't let it get to you.
Don't believe the lie. Don't believe the distortion, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, Alice might have been debating whether she should go on or not, or something like that.
That's what I think it was.
Yeah. So, and Mrs. Evans would always tell us, you always make a choice. It doesn't just happen. So you've made a choice. And I know in every experience that I've seen a person go on, I've seen that choice. It usually doesn't just happen all of a sudden either. It's a choice they've been making for a while. They've been giving up on life and accepting the negative. That's why this is just for today. We have to keep our thoughts with God. And loving life with a capital L, the true sense of it. Now, dear Carrie, she sent me this wonderful book, folder, I guess. It's called Library Notes, and it's a Daystar Foundation publication. Now, Daystar is a Christian Science library in Oklahoma. Tom is here, right? Tom,
Yeah.
Tom knows of it. Do you want to say anything, Tom?
I'm here. What do you want me to talk about?
the Daystar Library.
Oh yeah. So it's interesting. It's kind of nice. I've it's interesting when a library is like independent of the Boston Church, right? Because it doesn't seem like in general that people do those things. But on the other hand, when you look at what is a library, it just looks like a repetition of like Christian Science Monitor and Sentinel Journal and a few other things like that. But there are a couple interesting things there. So there were some tapes that were made about, what was it, George Glover's grandson, I think. Not quite sure, but I think it was his grandson. So there are a few things there. And then there's that person that was in Chicago. Someone could tell me who his name is, who died tragically, but they have some publications from him.
No. Yeah.
Neil?
No. I know who.
Mary Baker Eddy loved him a lot.
Yes. He had Carol Norton. Carol Norton.
Yes, Carol Norton. They have Carol Norton. And they have these tapes about
it's
Glover.
It's an interview with the grandson of Mrs. Eddy. She's being interviewed by, I think her name was Smouse. Anyway, it was
Smouse, Smaus.
I think so. Yeah.
Carrie
all this, but were you actually there, Tom? Did you?
I think this is in Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah, it's in Oklahoma.
But I was in the town where George Glover lived. I saw his house. I saw the cemetery.
In South
Dakota. In South Dakota.
Where
right.
George Glover lived, right?
Yeah. Well, this was
that's in South Dakota. Okay.
Yeah. The library, right? The library is in Oklahoma. And you can listen to this interview which tells, I imagine, a lot of interesting things about Mrs. Eddy. So, so anyway, she sent me this big folder, which I guess you can order if you want to, and it has all these notes, which are beautiful, interesting, like newsletters about early workers mostly, and about other things as well. But the one that I'm going to refer to today is about a Mrs. Bogue, Martha Bogue, and she was the one in in a recent Watch message, and in a recent article written by Nancy Bouchon in Texas, she quotes Martha Bogue quoting Mrs. Eddy. I'm sorry I didn't bring that quote today, but it was something about the way to save the world, and the only way to save the world is to know that God is all in all and that evil is nothing. That's a paraphrase, but and so Carrie, I mean, and me too, I didn't know a lot about this Martha Bogue. So it was a very interesting newsletter about her. And some of the things she says were very interesting. She talks about, and she's quoting Mrs. Eddy in this article, she talks about this Mrs. Gestefeld, who was a talented and prolific writer. We spoke about her a while ago. She was around during Mrs. Eddy's time, but it says she brazenly mixed Christian Science with theosophical concepts and thus conveyed Mrs. Eddy's revelation to the public utterly devoid of its inherently Christian foundation. And this is what New Age is about. And
well, she turned out to be the founder of the New Age movement. Right?
Yeah, in many regards, she was.
One of the founders.
In those days, it was called New Thought. It was also said that Mrs. Eddy said that if Jesus had not declared his divine origin, he would not have been crucified. If she, Mrs. Eddy, had not declared that science was revealed truth, mortal mind would be proud of it. She had feared that the truth was to be crucified again, that it would be so mixed with error that it would be lost. That was what Mrs. Gestefeld was doing in trying to simplify her book. But Mrs. Eddy hoped and felt that it would not be. And then she said, and you see, Martha Bogue was in Mrs. Eddy's classes. And what she would do, you couldn't take notes then, so she would go home and write everything. But yes. And Carrie made the point, and it's a good one, that in doing that, when you're not writing notes, you have your sole attention on what they're saying. And so when you get home and you pray that God will give you what you need, you can honestly get the real gist and heart and soul of what was saying, rather than when you're taking notes. You can sometimes be distracted by your note taking, which is why I'm sure Mrs. Eddy did not allow it.
Joseph Mann talks about that.
He does? Okay. Well, anyway, so this is more. She said, Mrs. Eddy, we must come into a common brotherhood as numbers could not be separated. It is so with us. Each one has his place, and there could be no envy, pride, vainglory, crowding, or jostling. That at present there was as much of this apparent in the ranks of Christian Scientists as among those outside. Then she stopped and said, students, there are enough in this room to convert the whole world to truth if you will hold together. Now that's a quote we know, a paraphrase of it. Each one in his own place, not to try to do what has already been done, not to try to write books, but to study what we had and be content to grow. That those who were explaining and simplifying her books might be better studying them and demonstrating what was there. I just thought that was very good. And of course, we know the early workers were being taught by her. So what they wrote was the fruit and the heart and the soul of her teachings, which is why we are so careful what we sell on our website and what we advertise, because it's very easily diluted. And she talks about the church. She said Mrs. Eddy was almost insistent that Christian Scientists, quote, must be externalized as a religion, and to the world that meant a church edifice, not meeting in concert halls or theaters, no matter how beautiful. And then they did, this was in Chicago, they built a huge church in Illinois. And then she said, this was a sort of commitment to the concept of church and its organization that Mrs. Eddy valued in Christian Scientists. The lessons learned through discipline, working, and praying together, and yielding up personal opinions in favor of the divine plan with its collective blessing were indispensable and were not likely to be acquired without the structure of the church organization. A prominent Christian Scientist who was a legal expert recalled Mrs. Eddy as speaking of those scientists who say that there should be no organization as, quote, not knowing what they are talking about, end quote. And went on to quote her as having commented, quote, organization is a simple matter for all of its importance. It is simply a matter of doing things by working together, end quote. Now that is the heart and soul. And you see, I believe we can have a spiritual organization. Loosely, loosely, not big control and I'm in control of everybody and everything in all the churches. But there is a value of it. And it keeps you disciplined. It keeps you on the straight and narrow way. We have to keep coming back to our watches, to whatever we're doing, reading the lesson, writing lessons, proofing, whatever we're doing. It keeps us grounded. And plus, then we have to get along with each other. And when you're just by yourself, in royal solitude, as Mrs. Eddy says, that might not occur as well. So I thought that was an interesting quote. And then this, Mrs. Bogue was a real firecracker. So Mrs. Bogue, whose life appears to have been one of continual challenges, yes, and it was, and battles to see right prevail, she understood the importance of a strong rebuke, and she realized that what is wrong must be rebuked, not appeased. And then this is a quote from one of her articles in an early Christian Science Sentinel, which Carrie sent to me, and we should have in our Liberator at some point. Quote, someone has well said, it is well to rise above violence. It is well to rise superior to anger. But if peace means final acquiescence with wrong, if your aim is less than justice and peace for everyone, then your peace is a crime. When one finds himself crying for peace, let him ask the question, peace with what? Peace in what? He who is conquering fear, envy, ambition, anxiety, sensitiveness, anger, all the passions, the works of the flesh, is not crying for peace because he already has it. Paul's understanding of truth did not keep the viper from fastening upon his hand, but it did prevent his being poisoned. John's understanding did not keep him from being thrown into the boiling oil or being exiled to Patmos. But it did prevent the oil from doing him any harm, while on Patmos he received the revelation. We cannot separate the scientists from science, and so amid the jarring testimony of the material senses where the smoke of battle seems the thickest, right there, it is ours to acquaint ourselves with God and be at peace. The peace that will prove abiding and inviolable. Inviolable, which means
can't be violated.
Can't be violated.
Can't be taken away.
I thought that, good for her. That was a good example of real peace, of what the real peace is. Otherwise, it's a crime. If you make peace with error, it is a crime.
No truce with error, like we talked about the last Bible study.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. No truce with error.
But if you are at war with hatred, at war with anger, at war with, whatever is ungodlike, then you are at peace. In your warfare, you have peace because you have all the power of God within you.
Thank you.
And this idea of church also, it's really fascinating. After our experience of being excommunicated from the Boston organization, we have learned so much that has been so helpful, not only as not only as a church, but individually, to know that that God supports us individually, and when we allow that to happen, we actually work together really well. And when people come into our church and feel uncomfortable and can't get along, well, we love the hell out of them. And they either learn to let God guide them or they take themselves out. We don't excommunicate. God does it for us when necessary.
Now, one other thing, thank you, that I wanted to mention. I deliberately didn't read what Louise wrote on the bulletin board because she mentioned, it was very beautiful how she had been, after Ingrid's testimony, that she said it prompts me to recall my instantaneous healing that resulted from comments made by Ingrid, I guess it was at the round table, May 10th, 2020, which after I immediately gave up all eating of meat. I've rejoiced as I prepared many vegetarian dishes ever since that day, with so much gratitude to God for a large variety and delicious taste of his many beautiful fruits and vegetables. And my gratitude continues for Ingrid's sharing on that day. And she quotes Mrs. Linscott asking Mrs. Eddy if it was right to kill chickens for food. And Mrs. Eddy replied, "You do not take life, do you?" Now, to me, that's an argument more why you wouldn't be a vegan or vegetarian. But, and I guess, well, this person was concerned maybe we would think that Mrs. Eddy was a vegetarian or a vegan, which we know she was not. And I just want to make that clear. She did eat meat. We know that Jesus ate fish. It was a very different time. She had maybe a cow or a couple pigs on her property at Pleasant View. There weren't these, and think of the word slaughterhouses. And I can remember even as a child, my mother saying she was going to the butcher. I said, why in the world would you go to a butcher? I mean, so we are progressing. And I wanted to read, because this is how I got into this discussion last week, and it was a quote I didn't have, but it was one Linda found in Teaching and Addresses, which I just passed me by. It shows when you're not interested, you don't see it. Kimball says, men are great murderers. They believe in being sustained by the death of other living creatures and things. Question asked, how do you justify meat eating? Answer, I don't. I eat less and less meat all the time. The body is 85% water, and we do not need so much solid foods as commonly used. That's Kimball. And then there was also, in 1884, February 2nd, in the Christian Science Journal, an article which I've referred to before, What We Eat. And he says very strongly, no, you don't go killing things so you can feed yourself. It's not even in Genesis 1, okay? It talks about nuts, fruits, plants. There's a strong argument for this. Am I a vegan or vegetarian? No, I'm not. I'm sort of like Kimball. I'm working toward it. But as I've said, I don't believe we're going to be killing animals in the kingdom of heaven. Do you? And in this article, What We Eat, it says, the God of life gives us his children, an abundance of all that is necessary in cereals, fruits, and vegetables to sustain life, blossoming on the breast of the dear Mother Nature. First a blade, then a flower, then a rich fruitage to abundantly satisfy the most exacting appetite. Think of these things. Taking a life with a view to sustain your own is wrong in principle, selfish in practice, and devoid of the apology of necessity. These articles were approved by Mrs. Eddy in those days, 1884, Christian Science Journal. So the reason I bring this up, it's totally up to you and your conscience, and everyone's in a different place, as Ingrid has so beautifully said. But we need to be open to some of these thoughts and the practices and what I've seen and heard about the way the animals are so mistreated and all of that. How can any of that be right? It isn't right. I don't think anyone can justify that. So
if you don't have, she says, go gently from matter to spirit. But so what you told me, everybody's welcome, and just go at your own pace. Go gently.
Thank you.
You do not.
Absolutely.
Yes, and again, this is not that we don't take a position about this. It's individual, entirely up to you, to your own growth and conscience and all of that. And but I did want to make it clear, if I didn't want anyone to think that Mrs. Eddy was a vegetarian. She was not, but I think she was open.
She didn't eat a lot of food and a lot
She
of
did
grains.
not. No, she didn't. Now, I'm very sorry because I wanted to get into the Beatitudes today, and I would suggest, and we had the book by Charles Spurgeon. Ingrid, we're going to have to end now, so I'm sorry, but can you save it for next week? Or I'll let you say in a few minutes. But anyway, Charles Spurgeon, the Beatitudes, it is a wonderful book. He takes each Beatitude and he goes into it with such love and reverence and depth. I wanted to talk about it. In our Bible studies, we have spoken about it. I know I brought it up. So we've had Bible studies on the Beatitudes you can listen to. Okay, Ingrid, right before we close now. Go ahead.
I'm bringing the promise in Isaiah. So beautiful for anyone that wants that type of life. It says, the lion and the lamb will lie together. And that's just such a loving thing. The lion is always, such a cruel beast and all that. And yet the vision is the lion and the lamb will lie together. And that's the kind of life that the vegan way or the vegetarian way will bring. So anyone that wants that, just go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, and it brings out too that the beasts won't eat you, because that's another thing. The beasts eat each other, but that will all stop. It will all stop.
It's a matter of time. That's it.
Yes. All right. We have time to, I thought we'd end on Parthen's forum, which was about probation.
Yeah, Parthen's quotes first from William Blake, where he says, quote, "We have put on earth a space that we might learn to bear the beams of love," end quote. And then he quotes a couple things from the first edition of Science and Health, quote, "The hour of darkness will come to those who improve not the preparatory school of the present to fit them for the future, but would step suddenly into all the benefits of experience," end quote. And he says, "This now moment is the preparatory school of the present." And another quote from the first edition, "The science of life enables us to come out from the world and be separate, to reach the moral distance between life that is spirit and the supposed life of matter, and live apart from all that is sickness, sin, or death," end quote. And then he says, "In proportion to the determination and perseverance with which I attend to the things of spirit here and now, the death grip of the five senses will tremble and falter until its strength is utterly exhausted. The more I refuse to play hooky from this prep school and its required courses, the more prepared I am for the hereafter."
I love that. And then one other short thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excerpt from Day in the Blue Book by Mary Baker Eddy. "Just for today, I will know that I am God's child under his protection, and that no plague can come nigh my dwelling. Just for today, I will know that God is good, and that God is love, and that he knoweth them that trust him. Just for today, I will know that I have strength to meet and conquer every claim of error, and that under the guidance of divine principle, I will be led to throw open the door for the entrance of truth, and know that through that same door, error is cast out. Then, with a sweet sense of God's nearness, I will know that yesterday has gone and left no bitterness, and that today is big with blessings, that tomorrow belongs to God. And to realize this today eliminates all worry and pain and trouble and brings us peace and happiness. Mary Baker Eddy.
Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Let's begin our service by singing hymn number 325. Take up thy cross, the Savior said, if thou wouldst my disciple be. Thyself deny, the world forsake, and humbly follow after me. Hymn number 325. The scriptural this morning will be given by Janet from Georgia.
Proverbs. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh. Hear ye children the instruction of a father, and attend to know understanding. I have taught thee in the way of wisdom. I have led thee in right paths. When thou goest, thy steps shall not be straitened, and when thou runnest, thou shalt not stumble. Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. My son, attend to my words, incline thine ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes, keep them in the midst of thine heart. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life.
Let us now have a moment of silent prayer and follow with the Lord's Prayer and its spiritual interpretation as given in the Christian Science textbook. Our Father, which art in heaven. Our Father, Mother God, all harmonious. Hallowed be thy name. Adorable One. Thy kingdom come. Thy kingdom is come. Thou art ever present. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Enable us to know, as in heaven, so on earth, God is omnipotent, supreme. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us grace for today. Feed the famished affections. And forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And love is reflected in love. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And God leadeth us not into temptation, but delivereth us from sin, disease, and death. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. For God is infinite, all power, all life, truth, love, over all and all. Let's now sing hymn number 237. Oh, may we be still and seek him, seek with consecration whole, listening thus to hear the message, far from sense and hid in soul. Hymn number 237.
May we be
Welcome to the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent. This is our Sunday morning service for October 24th, 2021. We begin each Sunday morning at 10 a.m. with our roundtable discussion, which is training session in practicing Christian Science. And we had another really good one this morning. So if you missed it, or if you want to hear it again, you can find it on our website, plainfieldcs.com, and you will also be able to find it on our YouTube channel. We have a Sunday school for children that meets at 11 a.m. every Sunday morning. And that Sunday school has its own teleconference number so that children anywhere in the world can attend just by phone. So if you don't live in the area and you have a child of Sunday school age, please call us. We'll be happy to give you the number, and we would love to welcome your child to our Sunday school. We have a testimony meeting every Wednesday evening at 8:15, where you can hear testimonies of healings and lives literally saved through the study and practice of Christian Science. And at all of our services, we have a nursery for infants and toddlers, so you can bring the whole family. We are going to have another Bible study. It's going to be in about 2 weeks. It'll be Saturday, November 6th at 10 a.m. So check the website for study questions, and please join us Saturday morning, November 6th. You'll be glad you did. We have a number of websites, many in different languages than English, so that the Word of God reaches people around the world. And one of the articles that is being currently featured on our English website, I wanted to point out this morning, entitled Ageless Being by Bicknell Young. This article is a little deep, it's a little strong, but it's good, and it's right. So I recommend it highly. Ageless Being by Bicknell Young. Everyone is welcome here, and that includes all of you who are listening and participating from around the world. And now we will have the reading of a testimony of healing from Miscellaneous Writings, which attests to the healing power obtained by studying the Christian Science textbook. And that reading will be given this morning by Karen from California.
Page 432. I like the Journal and Quarterly and have many of Reverend Mary B. G. Eddy's works, which make my little world. I have a great desire to learn more of this love that casts out all fear and to work in this science. It is the greatest pleasure I have to talk this truth as far as I understand it to any who will listen, and am waiting for others to learn of this blessed science. I give my experience in reading Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures aloud to a little child. A letter published in the Journal, written by a lady who had relieved a 2-year-old child by reading to her, first suggested this course to me. At the time, my little one was a trifle over a year old. I was trying to overcome for him a claim which, though not one of serious illness, was no small trial to me because of its frequent occurrence and its seeming ability to baffle my efforts. One day as I sat near and treated him, it occurred to me to read aloud. I took up one of the older editions of Science and Health lying near, began at the words, quote, "Brains can give no idea of God's man," end quote, and read on for 2 or 3 paragraphs, endeavoring, as the writer suggested, to understand it myself, yet thinking perchance the purer thought of the babe might grasp the underlying meaning sooner than I. So it proved. Before the disturbance felt by me had been calmed, the weary expression on the face of the child was replaced by one of evident relief. When putting him to sleep, I had often repeated the spiritual interpretation of the Lord's Prayer. One night he was very restless, fretful, and cried a great deal, while I seemed unable to soothe him. At last I perceived that he was asking for something, and it dawned upon me that the prayer might be his desire. I began repeating it aloud, endeavoring to mean it also. He turned over quietly, and in a few minutes was sweetly sleeping. The last time my attention was specially called to this subject was about a year after the first experience. Various hindrances had been allowed to keep me from science and health all day, and it was toward evening when I recognized that material sense had been given predominance and must be put down. I soon felt drawn to read the book. The little boy had seemed restless and somewhat disturbed all day, but without thinking specially of him, rather to assist in holding my own thought, I began to read aloud. Quote, "Consciousness constructs a better body when it has conquered our fear of matter." End quote. In a minute or two, a little hand had touched mine, and I looked down into a sweet face, fairly radiant with smiles. I read it over. The child was evidently delighted and was restful and happy all the rest of the day. A.H.W., Deland, Florida.
The lesson sermon for this morning can be found on page 8 of the Independent Christian Science Quarterly. Subject, probation after death. The golden text is from Romans. As Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. The responsive reading, 1 Corinthians. If in this life only we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable. But now is Christ risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. But every man in his own order, Christ the firstfruits, afterward they that are Christ's at his coming. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. For he hath put all things under his feet. But when he saith all things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted which did put all things under him. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him that put all things under him, that God may be all in all. Craig will now read.
The Bible, Isaiah. O Lord, thou art my God. I will exalt thee. I will praise thy name, for thou hast done wonderful things. And in this mountain shall the Lord of hosts make unto all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of wines on the lees well refined. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He shall swallow up death in victory, and the Lord God will wipe away tears from off all faces. And the rebuke of his people shall he take away from off all the earth. For the Lord hath spoken it. Matthew. And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. And seeing the multitude, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men revile you and persecute you, and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted the prophets which were before you. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house. And it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. And it came to pass, when Jesus had ended these sayings, the people were astonished at his doctrine. For he taught them as one having authority, not as the scribes. John. Then said Jesus unto them again, I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. I am come a light into the world, that whosoever believeth on me shall not abide in darkness. For I have not spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me. He gave me a commandment what I should say and what I should speak. And I know that his commandment is life everlasting. And it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, called Caiaphas, who is called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. John, now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews, that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. And they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went forth into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha, where they crucified him. Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre, wherein was never a man yet laid. There laid they Jesus, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was nigh at hand. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre, and seeth 2 angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself back, and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Romans. Now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. 1 Corinthians. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
Elizabeth from Georgia will now read.
I will read correlative passages from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. Life is eternal. We should find this out and begin the demonstration thereof.
Life and goodness are immortal. Let us then shape our views of existence into loveliness, freshness, and continuity, rather than into age and blight. Jesus taught the way of life by demonstration, that we may understand how this divine principle heals the sick, casts out error, and triumphs over death. Though demonstrating his control over sin and disease, the great teacher by no means relieved others from giving the requisite proofs of their own piety. He worked for their guidance, that they might demonstrate this power as he did and understand its divine principle. Jesus said, John 8:51, "If a man keep my saying, he shall never see death." That statement is not confined to spiritual life, but includes all the phenomena of existence. Jesus demonstrated this, healing the dying and raising the dead. Mortal mind must part with error, must put off itself with its deeds, and immortal manhood, the Christ ideal, will appear. Faith should enlarge its borders and strengthen its base by resting upon spirit instead of matter. When man gives up his belief in death, he will advance more rapidly towards God, life, and love. Belief in sickness and death, as certainly as belief in sin, tends to shut out the true sense of life and health. When will mankind wake to this great fact in science? The universal belief in death is of no advantage. It cannot make life or truth apparent. Death will be found at length to be a mortal dream, which comes in darkness and disappears with the light. The resurrection of the great demonstrator of God's power was the proof of his final triumph over body and matter, and gave full evidence of divine science, evidence so important to mortals. Let men think they had killed the body. Afterwards, he would show it to them unchanged. This demonstrates that in Christian science, the true man is governed by God, by good, not evil, and is therefore not a mortal, but an immortal. Jesus' unchanged physical condition after what seemed to be death was followed by his exaltation above all material conditions. And this exaltation explained his ascension and revealed unmistakably a probationary and progressive state beyond the grave. Existence continues to be a belief of corporeal sense until the science of being is reached. Error brings its own self-destruction, both here and hereafter. For mortal mind creates its own physical conditions. Death will occur on the next plane of existence as on this, until the spiritual understanding of life is reached. The period required for this dream of material life, embracing its so-called pleasures and pains, to vanish from consciousness, knoweth no man, neither the Son, but the Father. This period will be of longer or shorter duration, according to the tenacity of error. Progress is born of experience. It is the ripening of mortal man, through which the mortal is dropped for the immortal. Either here or hereafter, suffering or science, must destroy all illusions regarding life and mind, and regenerate material sense and self. The old man with his deeds must be put off. Unless the harmony and immortality of man are becoming more apparent, we are not gaining the true idea of God, and the body will reflect what governs it, whether it be truth or error, understanding or belief, spirit or matter. Therefore, acquaint now thyself with him, and be at peace. Be watchful, sober, and vigilant. The way is straight and narrow, which leads to the understanding that God is the only life. It is a warfare with the flesh, in which we must conquer sin, sickness, and death, either here or hereafter, certainly before we can reach the goal of spirit or life in God. The sinless joy, the perfect harmony and immortality of life, possessing unlimited divine beauty and goodness, without a single bodily pleasure or pain, constitutes the only veritable, indestructible man whose being is spiritual. This state of existence is scientific and intact, a perfection discernible only by those who have the final understanding of Christ in divine science. Death can never hasten this state of existence, for death must be overcome, not submitted to, before immortality appears. We have no right to say that life depends on matter now, but will not depend on it after death. We cannot spend our days here in ignorance of the science of life and expect to find beyond the grave a reward for this ignorance. Death will not make us harmonious and immortal as a recompense for ignorance. If here we give no heed to Christian science, which is spiritual and eternal, we shall not be ready for spiritual life hereafter. The sin and error which possess us at the instant of death do not cease at that moment, but endure until the death of these errors. To be wholly spiritual, man must be sinless, and he becomes thus only when he reaches perfection. Universal salvation rests on progression and probation, and is unattainable without them. Heaven is not a locality, but a divine state of mind, in which all the manifestations of mind are harmonious and immortal, because sin is not there, and man is found having no righteousness of his own, but in possession of the mind of the Lord, as the Scripture says. When it is learned that disease cannot destroy life, and that mortals are not saved from sin or sickness by death, this understanding will quicken into newness of life. It will master either a desire to die or a dread of the grave, and thus destroy the great fear that besets mortal existence. Being is holiness, harmony, immortality. It is already proved that a knowledge of this, even in small degree, will uplift the physical and moral standard of mortals, will increase longevity, will purify and elevate character. Thus, progress will finally destroy all error and bring immortality to light.
We will now have a moment of silent prayer for our world. Let's now sing hymn number 305. The words of this hymn are by Mary Baker Eddy. Shepherd, show me how to go o'er the hillside steep, how to gather, how to sow, how to feed thy sheep. I will listen for thy voice, lest my footsteps stray. I will follow and rejoice all the rugged way. Hymn number 305.
and its needs. I do not pray, but keep me, guide me, love me, Lord, just for today.
Let us now sing hymn number 324. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Hymn number 324.
I will read from the Christian Science textbook, The Scientific Statement of Being, and the correlative passage from 1 John 3rd chapter. There is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter. All is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation. For God is all in all. Spirit is immortal truth. Matter is mortal error. Spirit is real and eternal. Matter is the unreal and temporal. Spirit is God, and man is his image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual. Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us, that we shall be called the sons of God. Therefore, the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that, when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that has this hope in him purify himself, even as he is pure. Thou hast made known to me the ways of life. Thou shalt make me full of joy with thy countenance. Amen.